This is Heart-repreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart. With your host, Terri Levine. Listen every week as Terri tackles the topics that will help you become a successful heart-centered entrepreneur. Be sure to read the blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog. Come back often and add this show to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri and on Facebook.com/Heart-repreneur Terri Levine. And now here's Terri.
Hello and welcome to Heart-repreneur Radio and TV show with Terri Levine. I'm your co-host, Velma Gallant, and I'm excited to be here today. You can connect with Terri, me, and other like-minded heart-based business owners in the Heart-repreneurs with Terri Levine Facebook group, so go check it out. And we always love it when we hear what you're getting of value from this show. So like our show, hit that subscribe button, and we always love those 5-star reviews. Today's quote, "Be so good, they can't ignore you." Steve Martin. Today, we are talking about charging what you're worth. And today's special guest is Marc Mawhinney. Marc is a lifelong entrepreneur who helps coaches get more clients without paid advertising. He achieves this with his coaching programs, his podcast, Natural Born Coaches, his Facebook group, The Coaching Jungle, and the exclusive print newsletter, Secret Coach Club. He's been a speaker at events like Social Media Marketing World and frequently makes media appearances and contributes to Entrepreneur.com. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you for having me, Velma.
So this is a very interesting topic because I think we end up with entrepreneurs on all sides of the spectrum when it comes to charging what you're worth. What do you think is the most important thing for somebody to look at when they're considering charging what they're worth?
Well, I'll start off by showing, I don't know if you can tell the picture behind me, what's on there. It's a bunch of US $100 bills. So you and I are Canadian, but that's motivating for me. So a lot of people would look at that and think, oh my gosh, Marc, you can't have that in sight on a Zoom call and you're in business. You're not supposed to admit that you like money and things. And Terri and I have talked about this too. I'm very open with, I like money. I like what it can do for myself, for you and everything. And there's a great saying that I heard once that said, if you can't light up the world if you can't pay your light bill. So that's where coaches, online entrepreneurs, really anyone in business should want to make as much money as possible. Of course, you got to provide the value to get that money. There's no such thing as something for nothing. But this is a total estimation in my mind, at least in my world, coaching world. I would estimate at least 90% of coaches are probably undercharging. So I know there's a lot of people who are watching this that should be charging more. They probably know deep down they should be charging more. And that's what we're going to work on today.
Awesome. And I agree with you 100% because the reality is I can't contribute to others if I can't afford to support myself.
Exactly. Yeah. If I was doing this call with you right now and I had bill collectors calling and banging on the door and I was worried about paying a certain bill later today, and I wouldn't be able to focus on this. I wouldn't be able to focus on my client calls later today. I'd just be a nervous wreck. So that's not going to help anybody. You want to make sure that you're making a good profit. You're in business and you deserve it.
I really think that's an important point. I think that what I heard is I can't be the ultimate contribution to my clients if I'm spending a lot of my energy worrying about what is in my world. I can't be present in their world with them.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not going to be plugged in totally. You're human. So if there's financial issues going on, very difficult to block those out 100% and keep them out. So the thing I find in the online space, it's usually the people, the gurus, the experts who try to make it sound like they don't care about money. They're usually the greediest ones. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. We've all seen those webinars. Oh, put your wallets away. There's nothing for sale and all this stuff. And it's not usually the case. So me, I put it right out there. And it does, like I mentioned earlier, surprise people that I'd be so forward, especially us Canadians are supposed to be so polite and not admit that we like money and stuff. I'm like, no, I like money. That's why I'm doing this, of course. And I hope that you like money as well.
And I can be polite with money.
I made the joke. The reason that those pictures back here not our Canadian dollar, I'm not a fan of how our currency looks. And for any Americans, I don't know. Oh, here we go. I do have I don't know if you can see, anyone can see that. That's our $2 coin, of course, our toonies, and we've got loonies and everything else. That's not motivating for me to see a bunch of toonies and loonies.
No, and it'd be a heavy picture in the back of your wall.
It would. It may come crashing down, and I'm used to it now. But us Canadians, of course, losing all our paper currencies, our pockets are quite heavy because we've got all the that kind of stuff lying around. We don't have $1, $2 bills or anything.
So, how does someone determine what their value is?
Oh, boys. I mean, it's tricky because, of course, it's a wild west out there. You see people charging, say, coaching again. That's my world. And I know you guys do that. People charging $50 an hour or a session. Then you see people charging $100,000 a year. Now, it doesn't mean that the person is charging $1,000, we'll say, versus $100,000. That 100,000 is 100 times better than that person. Who knows? They probably are better, but it's all over the place. And it's a little bit like trying to nail Jello to the wall to determine how much. So I could just talk from personal experience and give myself as a little case study, because I think a lot of coaches are probably where I was back when I started coaching. It was in 2014. I jumped online, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I first started, I was charging $500 a month, just month to month as well. It wasn't packaged, thing where it was 3 or 6 months or a year. It was just $500 month to month. And now for some people looking at that and say, oh, that's pretty reasonable. You're doing well, Mark, with that. But I was undercharging significantly. And I got a little burnt out and tired of working with the people that I was attracting weren't my ideal clients. The person who I always remember, I call him my "What About Bob" client. Have you ever seen that movie with Bill Murray, Richard Dreyfuss, or no?
I've seen bits of it.
Yeah, so I recommend watching it. Bill Murray's it's a funny situation where a guy who's a little bit loopy ends up pretty much stalking a psychiatrist, following him to a vacation town and he won't leave him alone. The number of calls and everything else, he's driving Richard Dreyfuss crazy. So this client that I had he was actually a nice fellow. He wasn't showing up at my door and stuff, but he would expect an answer. He'd send a message on Facebook and would expect an answer within 10 minutes, and if you didn't answer him, he would continually message, and it was very high maintenance, holding his hand and stuff. And I was like, wow, this really isn't fun. What happened as I increased my prices and my fees to where I'm at now, I've never dealt with that type of person with where I'm at now, charging $10,000 for a one-on-one package, charging significantly higher. So my challenge for anyone watching this today is you don't have to jump from $500 to $10,000 today, because you have to believe in what you're charging or you're not going to be able to sell it, but at least bump it up. So maybe you're doubling it, at this point, then look at it a few months down the road, bump it up again. I've never regretted increasing my fees. Now, there's always been some hesitation, or sometimes been hesitation, but once I get it done and then I'm enrolling someone at that new fee with the new package price, I'm like, wow, I should have done that a lot sooner. So it's hard to jump from charging peanuts to charging a ton right away, but at least start going in the right direction.
Well, and so if you're one of those coaches who's charging the $50 to $100 an hour, and you double your prices, what I'm first of all, you would need half the amount of clients in order to achieve the same amount of income that you have. So that gives you an opportunity. One, you're not going to burn out as quickly, because that was one of the things that I heard that you experienced. And it would also operate as kind of a filtration system, in that you might get a more ideal client. I don't want to say better client, but a more ideal client. If you do increase those prices, you're less likely to get the ones that aren't quite a match for you. Is that true?
Yeah. So this is generalizing, because I think there's a-holes that don't pay much and a-holes that pay a lot. But generally speaking, I do find that the people in that lower range, I say a lot of people in that range are freeple and cheaple. They want, stuff either free or very cheap, but they can often be the most demanding. with it. Whereas someone who's paying your higher fees, if you're charging $10,000 or whatever, usually it's the type of person who doesn't require that constant, high maintenance hand holding stuff where they're contacting 100 times a day. Usually there's exceptions to that as well.
Yeah.
So I remember my first group coaching program. I started, probably 2 years into my business. I started offering group coaching. And at the time, I think I was charging like $997 for 3 months, or $999. It's basically $1,000, which I thought was good. I'm like, okay, it's for a group program. Nice people, not saying that they were bad people, but I had a lot of people not showing up for all the calls. They're not doing the homework. I had one guy that I let in with a scholarship. He promised he was going to be the best person ever, going to be an amazing student client, Mark. You won't regret this. He wasn't even showing up and wasn't doing any of the work or whatever. That's because I gave that to him for free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the scholarships don't work, because I know that it can work in the coaching world, but if people aren't investing or aren't investing much in it, they're just not going to treat it serious. And that's what happened in that case.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. So when it comes to pricing yourself, is there kind of like a structure that somebody can follow to kind of determine what their pricing is? Or is it just kind of like a self-evaluation kind of thing?
Well, I mean, first off, you have to look at how you're structuring your coaching. You could probably tell I'm not a fan of single session stuff where you're charging X amount per session. I don't care how much you're charging. I prefer to structure it as a package. So you're doing a minimum 3 months or 6 months or so on. I hate to throw out a price, because then when I do, everyone thinks, oh, okay, well, that's a magic number. It has to be this fee. And of course, it can be different. What I tell my clients for, let's say, a 3-month package, because that's usually the minimum I recommend for coaches, I don't recommend that they offer one-on-one for any lower than $3,000 US for 3 months. So that works out to $1,000 a month if you're working out that way. For one-on-one, anything lower than that, I really think that you're undercharging. Now, I want to encourage people to charge more if they can. I'm not saying that, okay, just go with $3,000 for 3 months. But that's what my gut told me. And it's told me with a lot of my clients I'm watching, that's kind of the base minimum to get serious people in there, but also to ensure that you're being paid what you should be paid for one-on-one coaching.
And I think what you said there is really important, is getting serious people. I think that when it comes to pricing something too low, you end up with people that, well, let's see if this works. And it's not, there's not that level of commitment like you shared with some of your earlier programs. I think too, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. What if someone's significantly lower than that? Is it a value for them to make that big leap, or is it a value for them to bridge their way towards that, like increase from where they're at, not necessarily jump to?
It's kind of like the Band-Aid approach, ripping it off. So I like making the jump instead of doing it incrementally. So for example, I know a friend of mine who's in a service-based business, and he's very conservative type. He's into the spreadsheets. In his business, he's very concerned with competition and trying to make sure that he's in that right ballpark for what he does. He increases his fees. I think it's 5% a year. I look at that, and I've said to him before, like, you really should be bumping up. He does very good, he and his team, with what they do. I said, that's hardly keeping up with inflation, especially nowadays. 5% or 10% a year, I don't think's enough of a jump. Now, I'm not saying that you can bump it up 10x, every year or whatever. But I think if you've got your head wrapped around increasing your fees, then you should go as high as humanly possible that you feel good about it. Now, where it becomes a problem is if you don't feel good. Like if I said to you today, Velma, I'm going to change my one-on-one coaching. I'm going to charge $1 million a year. I would love to charge $1 million a year. I'd love to get a client for $1 million a year. Does that feel good to me? Do I feel like it's worth it? No. I think worth a lot. I do a good job with it. $1 million a year, I'm not there yet. So I wouldn't feel good with it, and I probably wouldn't sell any packages because of that. So you have to find that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself, you're pushing yourself, but you're not being crazy and overpricing yourself out of the market.
Right, right. So I just want to take a quick pause here. We're going to take a bit of a commercial break. And when we come back, what I'd really appreciate is if you would share how our listeners can best connect with you.
Hey there, it's Terri Levine. I just wanted to pop in for just a moment as you're listening here to Heart-repreneur Radio and watching Heart-repreneur TV. We have so many new and exciting things going on. So you can watch a free masterclass. Highly recommend to get a conveyor belt of qualified prospects. That's at TL, like Terri Levine, tlwebinar.com. Head over there, enjoy it, keep listening and sharing the show.
So we're back with Heart-repreneur Radio and TV, and we're really happy to have you here. We're with our special guest, Marc Mawhinney. And Marc, I've really enjoyed what you've been sharing so far. What I'd appreciate is if you could share what is the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so naturalborncoaches.com is my main site. That has my podcast. There's over 700 episodes in there. Terry's been on, oh boy, I think at least 3 times. So she's been a frequent guest. But that's naturalborncoaches.com. Also, there's a Facebook group, The Coaching Jungle. We've got a large community of coaches in there, aspiring coaches. That's at thecoachingjungle.com.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So one of the things that I heard from you just before we went to our break was how important it is for you to have some belief in what it is that you're charging. And so what I hear from that is it's important for us to value ourselves as we're moving into our businesses. If we're not charging what we're worth, then the question I have is, how much do you think you're worth and how much do you value yourself? Is that kind of what you've bumped in with some of your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if let's say I don't know you, Velma, and you reach out through my podcast or something and you hire me, we start working together, but I'm not charging you much. That could be in the back of my mind where I'm resenting that, where it's eroding my confidence because I'm not making a whole lot. And it's going to affect our relationship too. So I've always said that you don't want to be, again, I'll throw a movie reference in there. Have you ever seen The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler? So in that movie, he's teaching the old woman to play the piano, and she pays him with meatballs, like she's like, oh, here you go. And she hands him these, 2 gross meatballs or whatever. I haven't been paid with meatballs in the early days, thankfully, but I don't want to be paid in peanuts or anything like that. So, I mean, for the relationship to really go full out 100%, you're getting as much of it out of it as you can, and I'm doing the best job. There really has to be a fair exchange there when it comes to what's being paid and what's being invested in the coaching. So I mean, I always say to coaches, the toughest person to convince isn't anyone out in the marketplace. It's always the man or woman in the mirror. If you can convince yourself, the rest is smooth sailing. That's a trick, is playing a bit of a Jedi mind trick on yourself to convince yourself.
Well, and you said something kind of interesting, because when I think of valuing myself, the question goes to, do I think I'm worth it? And you said something really interesting about resenting the client if you're not charging enough. And that makes a lot of sense. I think we can have both sides of the spectrum in the same experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like you're throwing darts at a picture of their face on a dartboard or anything like that. What you might be thinking as you get out of bed in the morning, you look at your calendar, what's coming up today for calls. I'm thinking, oh, geez, I got Velma coming up at 10 o'clock this morning. She's really not paying me much. Why am I doing this? And, that thinking creeps in, and that's not good for Velma either, the client or the coachee or the coach. So you're not doing any favors undercharging clients. You might think that you're helping the client because it's easier on their wallet and they're going to love you and all that, but they're not going to get the kind of results that they want. And so they're probably not going to become a repeat client. They're not going to give you testimonials or referrals or anything like that. So it's lose-lose all the way around.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it really points to what is the fee that's going to be keeping you in that sweet spot that allows you to be fully present and fully engaged with your clients so that you are serving them the best that you possibly can?
Right. Yeah, I think one of the big issues is a lot of coaches don't truly believe coaching is worth what it is, unfortunately. I know that's probably not a popular thing to say. If they've never hired a coach before, or maybe in the back of their mind, they're thinking, oh, is this really worth $3,000, $5,000, whatever?
Mhm.
I always tell people that humans love to spend money. What's that saying? They don't like to be sold to, but they love to buy. I've heard some crazy stories. I mean, there's one, you can Google it. There's a photographer that sold a black and white picture of a potato for $1.2 million, which is crazy. I wish I had thought of that. I would have went upstairs, got a potato, snapped a photo black and white, and bang. But apparently he had a name, and all that, a reputation, and people paid over $1 million for a picture of a potato. Or you look at people who spend thousands of dollars to go somewhere warm down south. They bomb their livers. They're hungover every day. But they're like, hey, I need to get away, and I want to have fun somewhere warm and tropical. So people love to spend money. Why would they spend money in those kind of things, but not invest in a coach who's going to help them get from point A to point B? Someone that's really going to help them achieve a result that they want to achieve, and get help. Take, for example, it doesn't even have to be business related. A lot of times people say, well, it's easy for business coach because they can show ROI and they can help people make a lot more money. Well, let's say if there's a father whose daughter's getting married next summer and he's 80 pounds overweight, his doctors have told him he's at high risk of having a heart attack, and he may not even make it to his daughter's wedding next summer to walk her down the aisle. Do you think that he would invest X number of dollars to ensure that he's going to be there and feeling 100% and have as many years down the road to enjoy his grandkids and stuff as he can? He probably will, right? So it doesn't have to be just money where it's people hiring a coach to make more money. Of course, there's health, there's relationships, love, everything else in there too. There's a lot of things coaches can do.
So what I think I'm hearing too is charging what you're worth is really only a piece of the equation of making sure that your own business is successful. It really is. And I know you cover this a lot, getting paid without spending a lot of money on advertising. So that's charging what you're worth is really only part of the equation. It is being able to articulate what it is that your client is going to get out of working with you in a way that they get it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also improving every year. I know Terry's big on this. She's been at it longer than me, almost 30 years. I thought I was at it a long time, since 2014. She has me beat. But if you're not improving every year, then you're really, others have a chance to leapfrog you, or you're sinking, at least flatlining. So that's one of the things that I'm very big on myself, and also with people I work with when I'm helping coaches, is don't rest on your laurels. What we're talking about sounds great if you're increasing your fees by 50% a year and you got hockey stick growth, but you also have to make sure that you're improving so that you can command those fees, that you're delivering what you're supposed to be delivering. I had Bob Berg, the author of The Go-Giver, on my show years ago, and he said a quote which always stuck with me. He said, money is an echo of value. So basically he's saying if you put enough value out into the marketplace, it'll be reflected in your bank account. So what we're talking about today isn't just, one-sided where, charge as much as you can get, and keep bumping up every year and all this stuff. You have to make sure that you're also delivering the value that you should be. It goes both ways. So money is an echo of value. That's something I think coaches, well, maybe not tattoo on their bodies. That's a little extreme. Write it down, put it somewhere where you can see it every day.
That is awesome. And I know it speaks to one of the things that Terri believes in is it's cheaper actually to keep engaging the clients that you have than it is for you to keep bringing in new clients. So you don't have as high of an investment for your marketing costs. And what that says to me as well is that's where the importance of always growing and expanding is important, because then you're continually bringing something to the table for your present clients as well. And they want to stay with you because they know that they're going to continuously get more and more as they're working with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, there's someone I've purchased, invested in his programs, products, print newsletters, and everything since 2016. I was working it out the other day. Besides his print newsletter, which I subscribe to, and I've been going monthly for years, I've purchased 5 or 6 of his books. He has high price books. They're worth every penny, but they're between $300 and $500. He just launched a new community building site basically that I'm invested in. It was a no-brainer for me because I trust his other stuff. I've learned a lot from him. I whipped out the credit card. Now he's $35 a month richer from me being involved in that with it. So yeah, he's made at least $10,000 from me, and I've made more than that from what I've learned from him. So I gladly would pay that or more if had the choice again. He's very good at selling to his super fans, raving fans, people who know him. And there's a blog post Kevin Kelly wrote years ago, over a decade ago, called 1,000 True Fans. And in it was geared more towards musicians, artists, creatives, but it's equally true for coaches. His argument is you don't need 1 million people, to be cast a wide net, try to get everyone on board with you. He says 1,000 true fans paying you $100 a month, you're going to do really, or $100, you're going to do really well. I would argue that you don't even need 1,000 true fans in the coaching world. 100, you could probably do very well with it. And that gets into a whole other thing. If you're afraid to niche down and stuff like that, you shouldn't be, because you don't need to get all 7.5 billion people in the world. You only need a small handful of raving fans to do very well.
Well, and I agree with you 100% on that, because I think it's really hard to communicate to 7 billion ears, because each one of them hears a little bit differently. So I think your message gets watered down too far anyways.
Yeah. And you're not everyone's cup of tea. So for me, there's some people watching this are like, oh God, he's an arrogant, a-hole. I don't want to work with him, or whatever. And it's funny because my clientele's split pretty close to 50-50. I don't target men, I don't target women or whatever. But I've had female clients say that they've hired me because not to knock people have a more feminine approach, but there's a lot of people in the online space that's, hey, look girly, would you like to be a boss babe or whatever and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That's not me. And I'm not too woo-woo either. I'm more meat and potatoes in a lot of cases. So female clients have told me, Mark, I went with you because of this. So there shows that you don't have to worry about trying to appeal to everyone. Don't cast your net too wide, or you're going to lose something there. Don't try to be too general, and just be yourself. I mean, sounds like common sense, right? Just like a Hallmark card, but be yourself.
Well, and I think that's part of the point, because even outside of business, you can't please everybody. And every time you try, you end up falling flat even harder than if you were making sure that you were pleasing the people that were more important to you versus the people that you don't really know so well. So I think the same thing kind of applies here. Is you go trying to speak to everyone, make everyone happy, you're going to end up making no one happy, and you're not going to be as successful in your business anyways.
Yeah, I think things have changed too since 2014, probably in the last couple of years. That you can't really get away with just putting out bland content that sounds like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And I see this all the time in the coaching world. People say, Mark, I'm not getting any traction. I don't know what's going on. I post 10 times a day on Facebook, and I do this and I do that. But then when I go through and look at what they're posting, it's usually just regurgitating motivational quotes that they saw online, or they're sharing stuff from other people. I have something I call the last 10 test. And what I recommend to those clients is that you take a look at whichever platform that you're most active on. You look at your last 10 posts or pieces of activity. And out of those, I would say at least 7 or 8, preferably more, should be your own words. So it's okay if you want to share something from Gary Vaynerchuk or Tony Robbins or Marie Forleo a little bit, but it shouldn't be 50% other people's, or in some cases it's 80 or 90% other people's words and promoting other people. Really, it should be your own message, your own, and your own offers as well. So that's the last 10 test, something I think more coaches and online entrepreneurs should do.
Okay. I think that's a really awesome tip. So, closing with that, I think it's really important that our listeners have an opportunity to be able to connect with you, connect with your work. I know you do more than just coaching with respect to charging what somebody is worth. What I'm hearing is there's a lot of opportunity to learn about social media and all of those kinds of things, because you do teach how to get more clients without necessarily paying for more advertising. So I think that's a value for our listeners to be able to connect to. So again, where's the best place to connect with you?
naturalborncoaches.com. They can hop on my email list. Full disclosure, I do daily emails, which could be a whole other interview, because some people be like, oh my God, daily emails. Well, there's a reason for it. But yeah, naturalborncoaches.com, or the Facebook groups at thecoachingjungle.com.
Perfect. And thanks so much for your time, Marc. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's really brought up a number of interesting thoughts for me as I continue to build my business. And I'm super grateful for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. And thank you to our listeners for coming and joining with us. Please hit that like button, subscribe. And we always love those 5-star reviews. And don't forget to head on over to Facebook and hit up Heart-repreneurs with Terri Levine, and you'll be able to hang out with more heart-based business owners. And there's a lot of fantastic information in that group for you. Thanks, and have a fantastic day.
You've been listening to Heart-repreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart, with your host, Terri Levine. This show is produced every week for your enjoyment and education. To make sure you never miss a single show, add us to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also read Terri's latest blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog, or follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri, and on Facebook.com/Heart-repreneur Terri Levine. Your questions and comments are always welcome and appreciated. Send them to Terri on either Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for listening.